Check 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I think I sound fantastic.
You sound fine. Don't get ahead of yourself.
What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Team Morale Podcast, where we do our three favorite things, talk a little bit of booze, a little bit of beer, and a whole lot of basketball. Ian the Tall Guy back with you again for our very first, the inaugural playoff pod.
Oh, what a time of year it is. A lovely time. A beautiful time. Where basketball is being played every single day. It's all matters because it's all playoffs every single day. Numerous games. I love playoff season. Specifically, like the first round is so fun because you got so many games going on every day.
Yeah, it is as close as the NBA gets to March Madness. Kind of. Now with the play-in tournament, you can argue that is pretty close to March Madness, but there are games going on every day. Every game matters. Every team is pulling all the stops, doing everything they can to win every game. And crazy things happen, especially in the first round. You said it very well. The first round this is where some of the upsets craziness happens, and this year is no exception. We've got some upsets brewing.
We're already seeing it right now.
Yeah.
And we're only a couple games in. I mean, we're at max 2 games into every series right now.
So, in all honesty, Mitch and I have been pretty busy. So we are recording this very late. You guys will be seeing this very late Wednesday night, probably most of you Thursday morning. We've been busy watching basketball, trying to stay current. So we are, being as current as we can. But yeah, it's super exciting to see all these games happening.
Who would have thought that quitting my job would make me more busy? Crazy life. But yes, we are now doing this Wednesday night. We're doing it as we watch the Grizzlies are just tipping off on Game 2 against the Utah Jazz.
Yeah, we just saw the Knicks beat the Hawks in Game 2 in the Garden, which was an electric game.
Oh yeah, you knew that the fans were gonna come out just like swinging in New York.
Yeah. And we'll get into that. But
before we do, I'm jumping into it.
Oh, all right.
I'm jumping into it. I'm taking charge here.
But
I'm
before
I'm
we
an
do,
assertive alpha male now. All right.
Quit his job and he grew a pair of balls.
That's all it took. That's all it took. All right. So before we do, we are going to talk about what we're drinking tonight. And tonight is a nice craft brewery IPA. It's called Turning Point Brewery. It's local here in DFW. And the one that we're drinking tonight is called Some Pulp New England Pale Ale. New England Pale Ale has actually been getting a lot more popular over the last couple years. But I want to shout out Brandon Hatfield real quick.
Yeah, Brandon is you guys have heard him on the podcast before, Grill Daddy B. He's been a kind of a reoccurring member of Team Morale and has been around for a little bit, but he is quite the beer snob.
He is.
Big craft beer guy, and he is a huge fan of the brewery that makes Some Pulp, Turning Point. It is in Arlington, and it is a great brewery. Go check it out. It's got some great stuff here, and this pale ale is no exception. It is really cool because it's like a mixture between an IPA and a pale ale, which leads to like a really cool mix of flavors that we can get into, in a little bit. But yes, shout out to Grill Daddy B for getting us into Turning Point, because he showed us where it was and kind of gave us the ropes there. And we had a couple of flights, and I came home with a pack of what I thought was my favorite beer of the evening. So very excited to have it on the pod today.
So yeah, like Ethan was saying, it's a local brewery. It's a couple of local dudes by the names of Alex Knight and James Peary. And they say roughly 6 years ago on their website, they got bit by the craft brew bug. And they were a couple of dudes that were just making beer at home. And they're like, and it was a whole mishmash, a whole assortment of different styles of beers and whatnot. And they thought that it was pretty good. So they started taking their beers to different bars and pubs throughout the DFW area, giving it to them for free, letting them be able to taste it, give it to other people, see what, people had any interest in this thing that they're creating. And it started garnering a little bit more interest as it was going. So then they started a crowdfunding campaign. And the crowdfunding campaign turned into them turning this Turning Point into a full-on brewery and a full-on, they like to consider it a lifestyle. For them, their craft is to make these these new beers, and they come in very, very like almost simplistic kind of cans, but it's very cool, very unique. They're still relatively new, but they're definitely blowing up in the area.
Yeah, and we've highlighted a lot of local stuff on the podcast before, just because we like supporting the local, businesses out here in the DFW area and giving shouts out to cool, like non-mainstream stuff that you guys should try, and this is no exception. This is a really cool beer. They do a lot of collabs with Martin House, which is another brewery that we've had on the podcast before. I think we did one of their beers. I can't remember which one.
We did the Chex Mix one.
Yes, the Chex Mix beer. Yes, and so this brewery is not as far out. They don't do as many wild flavors, but they do make a lot of really good brews.
Yeah, especially for people who love trying to get in on the ground floor, buying into the stock while it's still cheap sort of thing. Turning Point is a very, very good one for anyone that is listening and in the DFW area. You should go and you can get the beer at most of your local liquor stores and stuff, but you should definitely give it a shot. It's good stuff, and I'm going to sip on it, and we'll talk about the flavors later.
Yeah, one more thing on it before we move on. If you want to go check out their brewery in Arlington, it's a really cool spot, really cool place. When we were there, they're big soccer fans there.
Oh, really?
So if you're a soccer nut in the DFW area, go there and watch some soccer, because there was a game going on while we were over there trying some of their beers the other day, and all their people in the back were like making the beer were like peering around the corner watching the game, and it got really fun, and we were chirping them back and forth, and it became a whole thing. It was really fun. So
that's awesome.
Cool environment, really cool people work there. People in the brewery scene are always cool, but these guys were especially cool. Big soccer nuts. Big shout out to Turning Point for sure.
Absolutely. We love supporting our local craft breweries. But let's jump into it. Let's talk about some of the playoffs that have been going on right now.
Yeah, it's happening. Stuff is happening. Teams are either shot out of the gates hot or coming out cold, series are already getting chippy. There's a lot of stuff that just, I love playoff basketball so much.
I think there's a lot of compelling matchups like throughout all of them, especially like we're gonna start off in the East Coast. And here's
the Eastern Conference.
Eastern Conference, yeah. So your 1-8 matchup is the Sixers and the Wizards. And I thought that this was really interesting. If for no other reason, we're going to get to watch more of Russell Westbrook and potentially put up more triple doubles. I thought that it was going to be a rough matchup for them in the first place, and it's just kind of turning out into that.
Yeah, the 1-8 matchup in the East, no one really thought it would be much of a contest, just because, like you said, the matchup, the Wizards worst position group is probably their center.
Your big man, because they're without Thomas Bryant.
Yes,
who's been out
Thomas
for a
Bryant
long
being
time.
out, who I think tore his Achilles. Who's their normal starting center, a good young player, but still, even if they had Thomas Bryant, their center rotation of Thomas Bryant, Robin Lopez, and Alex Len, even throw Daniel Gafford in there, the young kid. No match for Joel Embiid,
No.
and it's showing, and he's cooking them.
Not at all. And I think that their best rotations happen when Daniel Gafford is in, because they're playing fast, they're playing loose, a lot more electricity, a lot more energy. He's a great pick and roll partner with Russell Westbrook. Like, he is much better at attacking the rim and kind of flying high, which is some of the better guys to play with Russell Westbrook are like that. But you can't have them in for extended periods of time, because Joel Embiid is just going to absolutely cook on a 6'8", 6'9" Daniel Gafford. So then you have to rely on Alex Len, you have to rely on Robin Lopez, and at that point, he's just feasting. It doesn't matter who. Like, you just don't have a guy out there that can compete.
Yeah, and Joel Embiid is doing it efficiently. He's doing it smoothly. He's doing it while it's like he gets the ball in his spot, and then it's over. Mm-hmm. He's not having to work to get anywhere. He's not having to really put that much effort into his positioning. Mm-hmm. It's all about, he's just kind of overpowering and just getting to his spots, getting the ball, one dribble, it's over.
Yeah, you can tell the NBA already knows that this is arguably the least watchable of all the series right now, because it's just kind of assumed. I'd almost at this point be a little surprised if the Wizards even got a game.
Yeah,
I'm assuming that it's going to be a sweep. I hope they get a game. I hope that they they got 2 more at home, win one with your home court fans, show that you can progress a little bit. But they're tossed on NBA TV today, and it's obvious that this is the least of the watchable games right now because we all know what's going to happen. The Sixers are going to take care of business.
Yeah, the Sixers are going to take care of business. The only thing that might give it a little bit more watchability is the things between Russell Westbrook and Joel Embiid were already tense and chippy. Those two like to go at each other, very demonstrative, very big and just like boisterous personalities that clash and aren't afraid of confrontation. So those two have gone at it for years. I know Russell Westbrook today, which is completely out of line by this fan, but some fan poured popcorn on Russell Westbrook when he was walking out of the tunnel at the end of the game today, which is just, a sad sight to see. Come on, like you can't.
But also, it's Philly. Like
that doesn't give you the right to. Oh, I'm from Philly now. I can just completely like dehumanize somebody. Like that's messed up.
No, I totally agree. Like that's totally messed up. But people from Philly are dicks. It's just like I'm expecting some bullshit to happen. Like if this series continues with the Hawks and the Knicks, where they just evened at 1-1, but I'm expecting New York fans to go absolutely wild on Trae Young in the future series. Like
that doesn't mean that
I'm not
you can
saying they
like
should. I'm not saying
do anything physically to a player.
No, you shouldn't. No, you should never be able to.
That
do
doesn't
anything
give
physically,
you
but
just because you live in a certain city's limits doesn't give you the right to just be terrible.
I would be pissed off. I'm pissed off that the guy even poured popcorn on him in the first place. I'm just saying, like, that's the kind of shit that you got to expect when you're playing in Philly and you're playing in New York.
So next time he should bring an umbrella when he's walking into the locker room, is what you're saying? Like
maybe. I've heard some crazy stories about like. It's usually like way in the past and sometimes in football games, but like I've heard like in college football games, people throwing beer bottles and shit at people. It's like, it's not good. It's horrible. This should not be a thing. But especially when you're in crazy places like Philly. But also on the other hand, it's the Wizards. It's Russell Westbrook. Like, how are you going to wait till you're playing, I don't know, the Nets before you start going crazy on people?
Yeah.
Hold your crazy in just for a little bit more, Philly. For a couple more rounds.
You're just, like I said, making fun of or like just kind of bringing down a lesser opponent. Like, Russell Westbrook has had a great year. It's a bummer that happened today. It's a bummer that they're down 2-0. I would love this to be a series, but I agree a sweep is imminent. If it goes 5, that's a win for the Wizards.
It's also just tough when Bradley Beal's clearly not at 100%. He's hobbling up and down the court. It makes it very, very difficult for the Wizards to make the kind of run that they want to at this point. But this series is pretty much a foregone conclusion.
Yeah, this one's basically over. Moving on to the next series, we have the number 2 seeded Nets versus the number 7 seeded Celtics.
The Celtics in Game 1 fought.
Yeah, I was about to say, Game 1 was closer than it should have been.
For like paper, 3 quarters.
On paper.
Yeah. The Nets ended up kind of blowing it out. It looked like it was not a competitive game, but it was competitive for a good 3.5 quarters.
Yeah, but the Celtics are just overmatched. Without Jaylen Brown, and then in Game 2, Jason Tatum got hurt, got poked in the eye really badly, and just at that point, the game was kind of over. So Boston was like, let's just pull him and get him rested for Game 3. But even with Tatum, the Celtics are overmatched.
Something's going on in Boston right now. There is going to need to be some sort of roster turnover. Maybe everything I've read is that they're not going to ditch on Brad Stevens. They're still very high on Brad Stevens, but there's clearly something amiss in Boston because most people going into the season assume that they're going to be at least a top 6 seed, top 5, 4 seed that's going to be very, very good and compete with these other top teams that we're looking at right now. And that's just not who they are. They look like they're going to get swept. They don't look much like an organized team that's like fighting very hard out there. It's just kind of if Jason Tatum pops and goes crazy, you have a chance at winning one of these games.
It's a team that lost all hope when Jaylen Brown got hurt.
Yeah,
is what happened.
They were already struggling.
They were struggling, but they were a team where like, okay, if we can limp into the playoffs, Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum are good enough to give us a fighting chance in any series. Jaylen Brown hurts his wrist, done for the year. Then you're like, what are we doing here? You know, like even if we were to like go all out and win this series, it's not like we're going to win the whole thing without Brown. Like, you know, so I can see the lack of effort, not necessarily effort, but cohesion on the team. And being down 2-0 early sucks. It's brutal. And Jason Tatum has been, he had a good Game 1. He struggled before getting hurt in Game 2. He didn't play well at all. The role players have not shown up. Kemba's been abysmal. It's all sorts of problems. I mean, there's not much else to say other than the fact that the Celtics are kind of a mess.
Yeah, and Marcus Smart's having an all-time horrible year for himself. Bad shooting percentages, he's battled injuries, and his defense isn't the same type of effectiveness that it has been in the past. Now he aggressively guards a guy at half court, and they just kind of blow by him, and all of a sudden the Celtics are playing 5-4 defense a lot because of him. And on the flip side of this is the Nets look like they're already putting this thing together. Getting the Celtics in the first round, I think, is a big thing for them because they're good enough to where you really do need to go out there. You got to try. They're not going to be a gimme because they have enough talent, but they're bad enough to where you should win the games. And it's enough. These 4 to 5 games that this first round is going to be good for them in cohesion moving forward with this big three.
Yeah, I mean, the big three have put it together perfectly so far. I mean, game 1 they combined for 82. Between the three of them, played really well. The ball's not sticking. There's ball. They're both. Let me rephrase. They're all willing passers, so the ball doesn't stick. There's still ball movement. Game 2, Joe Harris was actually the guy popping off early, so It wasn't even the big three. They were feeding the hot hand, which is hard to do when you have a bunch of superstars and it's a role player that's hot early. It's like, well, as a superstar, like, well, I got to get mine. Let me, get this ISO shot. Well, if Joe Harris is flaming, you've got to give him the ball so he can, keep shooting until he cools down. And they did that. I mean, Kyrie only ended with 15 points, but he played a great game. Yeah. Just because all three of them don't get to 20 points, in my mind, if I'm a Nets fan, that's a good thing. Because that means that they're not, and if they're all under 15 and they're all not shooting well, that's one thing. But if they're all like efficient, that's all I care about. The total points scored at the end of the game does not matter as long as you're efficient.
Yeah, I totally get that. And I think Joe Harris has proved that he's one of the best shooters in the entire league. And I think that he gained the respect of that big three to where they trust him. They trust him to make those shots. And, I think Blake Griffin is at the point with those guys. Like, they trust him. And there's a bit more cohesion, a bit more trust going on right now. The big question is going to be in the next series that we're going to talk about. If the Bucks make it through, that is going to be the Nets' first real adversity test. But let's move into it. What do you think about the Bucks so far in their series?
Yeah, the Bucks
Heat.
The Bucks versus the Heat. The Bucks look good. Mm-hmm. The Bucks look really good. They look really good defensively. If I'm the Nets going back, like I said, no, I'm not looking past the Celtics, but I'm gearing up. Like, this is going to be a huge series if the Bucks and the Heat, or the Bucks and the Nets both move on, and that's what it's looking like to this point because the Bucks have taken care of business. Game 1 was tough. Game 1 was tight.
Boy, was it tough.
It was a huge game, and it almost looked like it broke the spirit of the Heat a little bit because they came out in Game 2 and laid a big ol' egg.
It was a mental barrier game for the Bucks, I think. To go and play a team in the Miami Heat that took care of business against the Bucks, that during the bubble, the Heat, some people are saying that the bubble was just like perfect for the Miami Heat and that's why they made their run. I think that that's fair and not fair at the same time. I think the Heat did lose some pieces. I think that they've had a hard time putting everything together all year, and now they're running into a Bucks team that's been preparing for the playoffs the whole year. But that first game, they battled. They go to overtime. They battle. And then all of a sudden, Chris Middleton hits a great shot and you lose game 1. And for the Bucks, it was like, all right, we got this. Like, I know we can take care of business. And then for like the Heat, like you're saying, it was just it just destroys your confidence. And you saw that in game 2 where they got killed. They got destroyed when the Bucks were actually starting to hit their threes.
Yeah, and the Bucks are a much better 3-point shooting team this year than they have been in the Giannis era. And they're arguably one of the best defensive teams in the NBA this year. Mm-hmm. And they are making it super hard on Jimmy Butler and Bam Adebayo, both shooting horrible percentages, both below 30% from the field. Bam doesn't really shoot threes, neither does Jimmy, but both are struggling from the 3-point line. Both, getting cooked on the defensive end just because Giannis is a beast. And it's just, if you're a Heat, you're basically the one player that has been playing kind of decently from you is Duncan Robinson,
who struggled in game 2 still. Like game one killed it, and
Yeah.
then like along with pretty much everybody, everyone got shut down for the Heat in that game too. But yes, Duncan Robinson's kind of the guy that you're relying on right now.
Yeah. Well, the addition of Drew Holiday to this team to the Bucks team cannot go understated because they have a perimeter stopper now. Chris Middleton's a good defender for his size, but they needed a point of attack stopper to just kind of help Giannis not have to be relied on so much on the defensive end so he can focus on his offense in the playoffs, because this team will go as far as Giannis takes them. That being said, them having a player like Chris Middleton is huge because he can get his own shot, and he's the guy that, in my opinion, the Bucks are going to go to in crunch time. Because Giannis is a great player. This is not a knock on Giannis at all. But he struggles in like those late crunch time situations, getting his own shot in an ISO situation because he can't really shoot. So all he can do is drive. And don't get me wrong, he's the best driver in the game. But when everyone knows you're going to, especially in a clock winding down situation, they're just going to pack the paint. Whereas Chris Middleton, he can hit you from all three levels. And so that's why in that overtime game on the line, needed a game-winning shot, they went to Middleton.
Yeah. I've been saying this for a while now, but I think that Giannis's comparison to who he is in our modern-day NBA is he's like Shaq. He is so dominant. Everything he does is kind of like inside the paint, getting to the hole. He does it obviously in a different way than Shaq did, but that's kind of how he does. But even with all of Shaq's championship teams, it was Shaq dominated for 3.5 quarters, but then you can't really rely on Shaquille O'Neal at the end of the at the end of the fourth quarter when they're starting to foul, they're starting to hack. He can't make free throws. That they're just going to be fouling him if he's ever going to shoot it. But so you need a Kobe, or you need a Dwayne Wade. You need another guy that can, from the perimeter, score at all three levels, get a bucket on his own, get a bucket without even if they fouled him, that he's going to be able to make his free throws. And that's what Chris Middleton has to be for the Bucks, I think, if they want to make a real championship run. That's what he has to step up to be, at least.
This will be if the Bucks are going to win the whole thing, this will not be Chris Middleton's last game-winning shot of the playoffs.
Yes.
He's going to have to hit one, if not two more, in order for them to win the whole thing.
Yeah, and he's going to need to step up. Because I feel like the blueprint is you attack the paint with Giannis, and then hopefully you kick out to Middleton, or Middleton is attacking his guy one-on-one. Either way, it's usually going to be someone else other than Giannis taking these last-second shots. So it's going to be very, very interesting for the Bucks. But on the other side, I'm almost feeling a little bit bad for the Heat. I hope that they can continue to push this to be a good series. I have the Bucks actually winning the championship. That's my hope. I really want the Bucks to win the championship because it'd be a great storyline. And I think that they are in the point where they kind of deserve it. But the Heat should not just fade away. I would expect they win at least one at home.
A sweep here for the Heat would be just icing on the top of a crappy season cake.
Mm-hmm.
And, sometimes it happens. You just have dud seasons. But when you have, Jimmy Butler, who's on the tail end of his prime, and you have all these young guys that are up and coming, that's kind of a waste.
Yeah.
Because you've got this perfect mixture of talent, young and old, that is, working very well together. This is a waste of a season because can this team win the championship? Yes. Are they favored? No. It's like you need to have that, which is what they had last year, but that 2011 Mavericks run.
Yeah.
Where there's no dynasty here. There's not a dynasty that you guys are trying to do, but you're looking for that one-off, just you get hot at the right time, and that's what they were last year. They were hoping to repeat this year, and it's just not the same.
Yeah, I think that their roster is going to look a little bit different. The Heat are still a team that's star hunting. They're still looking for who is the next guy to pair next. They got Oladipo.
Losing Oladipo hurt.
That hurt a lot. But yeah, they struggled kind of throughout the entire season. Jimmy started off with COVID and looked like a stick figure out there, and then he gained his muscle back, and he looks great now. But it's just they had a hard time all season, and now we're starting to see that even more come playoffs against a team like the Bucks, who I think they've been less focused on the regular season this whole year and focusing on different playoff aspects. How can they change their defense? How can they change their offense? What kind of looks are they going to be going at? And the difference between the two of them, one just trying to catch up, and the Bucks, who've always been ahead, now preparing, is just now obvious as to what that looks like come playoffs. And I hope it's not a sweep, but I would not be surprised if it were.
Yeah. Let's move on to the most interesting matchup in the East, which is there is playoff basketball happening in the Garden, and that needs to be talked about because COVID's been tough for everyone. I think it was such a beautiful sight to see a packed Garden. Sure, they lost game 1, but it'll be years from now, kids in school that'll be looking back, reading about this time period. I think the fans being back in the Garden for playoff basketball will be something they read about.
100%.
I think it'll be like a benchmark thing for America going forward is that we had fans back in the Garden, and sure, Trae Young hit a crazy game winner, but we had fans back in the Garden.
For playoffs.
Let's
for
go.
Playoff basketball. And, almost on a wider scale scope, like the NBA has kind of been leading the charge on everything COVID. Like when they shut down, the world shut down. And now that the playoffs are coming and they're allowing people to be back, and it's like we've been starved of empty stadiums. Like we love sports. We've been watching sports on TV and we all know we love it. But watching a full packed stadium and there's no every single player will tell you there's no situation, there's no atmosphere that matches that of Madison Square Garden and that of New York. Even when the team is shit, people were still like, they stepped up because it was Madison Square Garden. Now the team is good. The team is in the friggin' playoffs. They're a 4 seed. They got home court advantage. We got to watch them, and I got chills down my spine watching the very first game and like hearing the crowd roar.
Watching Spike Lee
go wild
again. Tracy Morgan was there. They kept showing him, but like
Jon Stewart was there.
Watching Celebrity Row, but like Spike Lee back in the Garden. It was like in a time where like I'm glad they're doing it safely. Let's say that. I'm glad they're doing it safely, but it was a time where it was like a little bit of normalness. It's back. It's starting to come back. It's been a long time and it's starting to come back.
Yeah. And then on a pure basketball standpoint, it's going to be such a fun series.
Yeah.
These are two very, very young teams. Both
different teams.
And very, very different teams. Like the Knicks attack it from an aspect of they play their star guys very heavy minutes. They really focus in on defense. They're a hard-nosed team because of the way that Tom Thibodeau does it. And then the Hawks, Nate McMillan typically has been more of a slow it up kind of coach, but because he has the roster that he has, he turned the Hawks from a okay team at the beginning of the year, like kind of not going to make the playoffs, to when they fired Lloyd Pierce, brought in Nate McMillan. Now they're a 5 seed. They were killing it at the end of the season, reaching all the way up, getting to the 5 seed, and they shoot the ball like crazy. They got all these great isolation guys, and they're actually starting to like really play well off of each other now. I don't know who wins this series, and I honestly don't really care because I think that either way, it's great.
I follow you there. I mean, the defense of the Knicks, they're one of the best one of the grindiest, like muck up the game type of teams in the NBA, versus the Hawks, who are outside of the Nets probably the most offensive firepower in the NBA. Mm-hmm. They have, like I've said before on the pod, 5 or 6 guys that if they went for 30, you'd be like, oh yeah, I can see that.
Yeah,
yeah,
they have a ton of guys like that.
Trae Young, Bogdanovich, Gallinari, Lou Will.
Wouldn't be surprised if Capella gives you 20. Same with John Collins.
You have I was about to say John Collins. You have Kevin Huerter. I mean, that's 7 right there.
And we haven't even mentioned DeAndre Hunter, who arguably is the biggest linchpin to what they do because he's so good as a two-way player.
Yeah, and so there's so many players that just are so fun to watch offensively, and the Knicks, so many players that are so fun to watch defensively. It's yin and yang, where the offensive is the strength of the Hawks and the defense is the strength of the Knicks. So it's like this big like clash every time they're on that side of the court, and it's in the Garden, and there's just so much thing. Trae hitting that crazy shot at the end of game 1, talking mad shit to the fans. Talk your shit, Trae.
Yeah.
Fans talk it back. Like this is old school. Teams don't like each other. We're just here to play basketball type of series, and it is going to be awesome when we go back to Atlanta.
Oh, dude, I love it. I love that the young talent is stepping up. I love that there's chippiness. I love that there's shit talking. Shit talking is so much fun. It makes sports like so much better when there's like outright just like, fuck you, no, fuck you. And they're just like going at it head to head, and every single game just matters like a little bit more. I love this series. I think it's great. I think it's really the best and only, the best series in
The
the
only
East Coast
toss
to
up
watch.
left in
Yeah.
the East.
Yes.
Yeah, the other 3 series are kind of done. The East is at least the Knicks and the Hawks are still a toss up, which will be super fun to watch. That is a series that you've got to tune in and watch every game because Trae Young is much CTV. He is so fun to watch, and it's going to be so fun to see how Tibbs kind of combats him. Julius Randle, the most improved player, is the driving force behind the Knicks. All the good players in this series are young, besides like Derrick Rose.
A couple of the classic Tibbs vets. Like you
You
got Taj Gibson.
Yeah. So you had Taj Gibson, Derrick Rose, and a bunch of young guys just doing their thing, which is awesome to see. Super fun series, but that kind of wraps up the East.
Yeah, no, it does, and I think that the East is definitely going to have one of the most compelling second rounds. While as we're going to get into the West, which has I think the most compelling first round. But before we get into that, let's talk a little bit about our beer.
That was a second, but before we do,
I know.
I think that might be a first, second, but before we do.
I now I'm just squeezing them in before as much as I can.
We're selling T-shirts.
Yes, we are. All right, so the beer that we're drinking from Turning Point Brewery is called Some Pulp DDH New England Pale Ale. Now, I'm going to be completely honest with you. I love beer, but I'm not the most knowledgeable when it comes to beer. I definitely study up a little bit more on the whiskeys and alcohol sides of things, so I couldn't tell you what the difference between an IPA and a New England Pale Ale is, but what I do know is that this is a damn good beer.
It is very good. The difference between a pale ale and an IPA, to my understanding, I'm not a huge beer guy as well, but the IPAs are going to be a little bit more hoppy, I believe. Well, the pale ales are a little bit more juicy, and this is a good mixture of both. And the hoppiness is that almost, I don't want to say soap taste that you get, but like a super hoppy beer has a little bit almost like, it doesn't taste like soap, but people kind of compare it to a little bit soapy, where the juicy is that not sweet, but it almost feels like, it almost tastes like you bite into like a peach, almost, that juiciness. Whereas like this is a very, very juicy. I would say this is more on the IPA side, but it's a very juicy IPA.
Yeah, no, I don't get the hoppiness nearly as much with this, because there's sometimes where I'm drinking an IPA, or it's like the extra pale ales or whatever, and it's like, I feel like I'm working my ass off just to finish this beer. I don't feel this way at all with this. This is so smooth, and the juiciness is actually a really interesting way of putting it. It's almost like you wouldn't really understand it until you drank it, sort of thing, but it tastes juicy. They're called Some Pulp. I definitely get the hints of orange that they're going for, and it's really just good. It's filling in the mouth, and it goes down easy. I could drink this in a lot of different situations and be very comfortable.
Yeah, this is I actually explained it. The logo on it has is that a tomato?
I think that's an orange. I think that
it's an orange.
I think these are supposed to be oranges.
But it's an orange.
You got to put it in the light for it to get the orange.
Oh yeah,
see how it's shiny.
It's an orange parachuting what it looks like into a battle. He's got a gun.
It's Nom. It's totally Nom. They're parachuting in over a river. There's one guy wearing a little orange in the background, wearing a headband with like a machine gun. It's great. Whoever whoever drew this up is awesome. This is really funny.
But I said this when we went to Turning Point to like try it, and I ended up trying this beer for the first time. I got a flight, and I was like rating, the ones I liked and didn't, and it was between this one and another one.
Burp it away, man. Burp it away. Better out than in.
And I ended up liking this one more. But I was like, this is a perfect, and I don't know how much of our audience has been skiing before, but this is a perfect hit the bottom of the mountain, go into the lodge and grab a beer and sit there after skiing all day type of beer. And I don't know what made me think of that, but ever since I've thought that, the taste of this, I'm like, oh, I feel my knees hurting a little bit. My feet kind of ache because I've been skiing all day. But yes, this makes me, it's the perfect like post-ski beer.
It's funny. I don't think I ever would have got there, but the fact that you say that, yeah, it really is. It's
kind of weird,
almost
right?
Like it'll fix your joints, sort of thing.
It's kind of weird, right? It's a perfect hearty beer that's like good enough and like got enough oomph to it to warm you up a little bit, but also it's smooth enough and nice enough that you can drink 3 of them.
Oh yeah, I'm definitely gonna be drinking a bunch of them by the end of tonight for sure.
Yeah, this beer is just, you know, it's perfect for that. It's a perfect ski beer. It's, it's got the smoothness, it's got the bite, it's got, the flavor's good. It's an all-around beer.
It's a good beer.
It
It's
is.
what it is. It's
Give it a
good
try.
beer. Give it a try.
And from what B Hattie, Brandon Hatfield's Grill Daddy B, he goes a man by many names, has told me this is one of many good beers coming from Turning Point. So give them a try. Some Pulp is what we're drinking today, but we're really highlighting Turning Point, which is just an all-around standout, top-notch brewery in the area. Give them a go. But let's break into the West here a little
All right, let's do it. So we're going to start off the same way we started off the other conference, which is to start with the 1-8 game, which is actually going
currently
on
happening.
right now.
This is game 2.
Yes, game 2. So right now they're 8 minutes in the second quarter, and it's 48-33. The Jazz are kind of taking care of business. Big difference in this game is that Donovan Mitchell came back. Right now, Donovan Mitchell has 12 points on 3 of 6, and wow, 3 of 5 from 3 and 3 of 6 from the floor. So Donovan clearly wanted to come in and put his print on this game and be like, no, there's a difference between the Jazz and the Jazz with Donovan Mitchell.
Yeah, the Grizzlies came out and won game 1 in
Spectacular fashion.
I don't want to say shocking fashion, because it was one of those games. It was definitely spectacular to where, I was rooting for the Grizzlies. I love the underdog type thing. But without Donovan Mitchell, and Rudy Gobert was in foul trouble, and it was basically everything that could go wrong for the Jazz did type of thing. Whereas at the end of the third quarter, I was like, all right, if I'm a Jazz fan, I'm looking at this and be like, all right, we're just not meant to win game 1. And that happens sometimes, especially 1-8s.
Yeah.
Because the 8 seed comes out like it's their Super Bowl, and the 1 seed comes out as like, oh, we're the 1 seed, let's beat the 8 seed. And then, you get smacked in the mouth in game 1, and then you come out and take care of business.
I think there's definitely something to be said about these play-in games as well. The Grizzlies have been playing playoff basketball for a good week and a half now.
Which happened last year with the Portland Trailblazers.
Yes.
They came in and having to play, must-win game after must-win game, and then they came out and won game 1 against the Lakers.
But then we saw what happened after that, right? It turned into a 5-game series. They kicked our ass after that game 1. So the Grizzlies, last game of the series, last game of the season, played against the Warriors. That determined who was 8-9. Then they go into the 9-10 matchup, play against the Spurs. Then they go against the Warriors. So they had, their last 3-4 games have been playoff atmosphere, Game 7 games, and they came in very confident, ton of momentum. The Jazz a little bit stagnant without their star player, and they just kind of. They rolled into that game and really they didn't dominate, but certainly they were in the lead for most of that game. And they kind of took care of business for the most of that game. And I think we all could expect that the Jazz just kind of need to get their footing, just kind of need to take a deep breath, get Donovan Mitchell back. And then all of a sudden it's okay, we still are the number 1 seed in the West. We still are a damn good basketball team. You best not forget that.
The Jazz should win this series.
Will
they? It's up to know, because the Grizzlies are that scrappy team that could,
And the last 8 seed to win.
Yeah. That being said, the Jazz should win this series. The biggest news coming out of this is actually not happening on the court. And that is Donovan Mitchell's anger and outright frustration with the Jazz organization. Mm-hmm. And that will play he's locked up for a while, but that is an interesting thing in today's NBA, where players demand trades left and right. It is interesting to see what he does, because he has made it very known that he was unhappy with the organization this year, and then him getting benched, or not benched, but told he couldn't play because of injury going into game 1, he was not happy.
Which is especially interesting, being that they've been so successful this year. Rarely do you have a team that jumps from the 4-5 seed to being the 1 seed, and then the star player's more upset, which means there's clearly more stuff going on behind the scenes and more personality issues, which maybe it goes all the way back to the coronavirus thing with Rudy Gobert. Maybe he doesn't love having Gobert as a sidekick. Maybe he just doesn't. Maybe he wants the spotlight more, and the Jazz are more of a Spurs-like team where they distribute and move the ball around a lot. So it's going to be very, very interesting to see what happens with that. Now, it's interesting to note that the last 8 seed to win was the Grizzlies against the Spurs. They were an 8 seed. They beat the Spurs as a 1 seed. That was the first year of the Grit and Grind Grizzlies, when they had Marc Gasol, Mike Conley, Zach Randolph, and Tony Allen. And now this is the first real playoffs of this new Grit and Grind Grizzlies with Ja and Dylan Brooks and Val and
I
Jaren
wouldn't
Jackson.
call it grit and grind.
I would. This is absolute, like, have you seen Dylan Brooks play? That is the
grit and grind
guy.
Dylan
So is Ja.
Brooks is a grit and grind guy. I would call it almost like speed and speed. They play so fast.
They do. They play very, very fast, but they definitely got like a meanness to them that like for a very young team is kind of hard to establish. So, is there a chance that they win this series? Absolutely. They have home court advantage now. You know, that is absolutely a thing. I still put my money on the Utah Jazz, but the Grizzlies are a very, very interesting 8 seed where they don't look like they're afraid of the spotlight. They don't look like they're afraid of the stage of being against a 1 seed, and I don't think that they're super scared of the Jazz.
They're not scared of anybody.
No,
and I love that. The quintessential moment of that was in game 1. At the end of the first half, Desmond Bane hits a deep 3 at the buzzer and turns around and starts jawing.
Talking shit.
Talk your shit,
Talk your
Desmond
shit.
Bane. Shout out TCU. Talk your shit. But that's the thing, man. That's a rookie in the playoffs hitting a big shot and turn around and jawing.
Yeah.
Let's go. Talk your shit. Playoff basketball is here. Players, talk your shit. Let's ride.
Dude, this is the youngest team in the NBA. This is the Grizzlies are the youngest team in the NBA. The oldest guy on the Grizzlies is a 30-year-old Tim Frazier. Everyone else that they play that's like actually rotation guys, like Jonas Valanciunas, I think is 27, 28. Then everyone else is about like 3 or 4 years into the league and less. Like Dylan Brooks, I think is the most vet guy out of 4 years into the league. This team is going to be super fun to watch going forward. This is just scraping the surface of the talent of what the Grizzlies could potentially do. Now, let's talk about the Jazz. The Jazz are still a very, very, very good basketball team.
Yeah, the Jazz are a 1 seed for a reason.
Yeah.
And they play both sides of the ball really well. They play offense well. They play defense well. They probably will win this series, but it's one of those things where we can talk about this matchup all day. The thing about the West in the first round is the West is so deep and teams are so good we can do a whole podcast on each matchup and go into each thing. But we don't have time for that. We're already over. Jazz are probably going to win this series. They're probably going to win game 2. It'll probably be evened up at this point. We're recording while it's happening. Moving on, let's talk about maybe the marquee matchup of the Western Conference.
Certainly the most popular.
Because it's got the Lakers, but it's Lakers-Suns in a 1-1 tie so far.
So many fun parts to this series. To start off with, a historically great rivalry.
Especially in the playoffs.
Yeah, especially in the playoffs. Los Angeles and Phoenix is nothing more than like a 4-hour drive from each other.
Yeah.
You know,
if that.
Yeah, they're very close to each other. Phoenix, I can almost, feel sympathy for them because like Portland's like the little brother to Seattle. Phoenix is like the little brother to Los Angeles. They feel like they are at least. And the Lakers have killed them, and so like they have like Kobe has put the dagger in the heart of the Steve Nash Phoenix Suns, and they've been killed by the Lakers so many times. And now all of a sudden you had such a great year. You were like you weren't even in the playoffs last year, and now you had such a great year and you're the 2 seed, and you end up with the fucking Lakers in the first round. Oh, that sucks.
Yeah, that's a brutal matchup. The matchups there are so tough because the Lakers' strengths are the Suns' weaknesses. And if Chris Paul, who appeared to, in my opinion, dislocate his shoulder, there's nothing to prove that. They called it a contusion, but it looked like he dislocated his shoulder.
Yeah.
And it looked like he went back to the locker room, was gone for 3 minutes of game time. It looked like they popped it back in, and he came back out and tried to play. If he can't go, if he's not at least healthy, he's been playing since then, but he can't dribble with one of his hands. Mm-hmm. Like, if he can't go, the series is over.
Yes.
It's over.
No, I totally agree. I mean, Chris Paul was the catalyst that turned them from a young team that's building, that's hoping to make the playoffs, to a top-tier Western Conference basketball team. And without Chris Paul, God bless Cameron Payne. He's having a great season, but he's not going to take you to the promised land like Chris Paul will.
And a big thing here is with Chris Paul out, that moves Devin Booker into the playmaking role. Devin Booker's a great player, very good at playmaking, but he is best as an offensive weapon, not necessarily a playmaker. He's an offensive weapon. He's best when he's given the ball in his spot to score as opposed to creating for others.
Yeah.
I was listening to the radio earlier today, and it was the big equation was Max Kellerman was actually talking about it, and he was saying that Devin Booker's offensive game is about as close to Kobe's as we have in the NBA right now.
Yeah.
And Kobe was really good at creating for himself and getting shots, right? Well, he also benefited when he was good. He had Derek Fisher next to him.
Yep.
Now, a guy who is good, a good defender, a good shooter, could do his thing, but also could create for others.
Almost organize the offense.
Yeah, a glue guy, right?
Yes.
A guy that could come in and just kind of like lubricate the offense, get everything going. Well, now Devin Booker's got to do both jobs because Chris Paul can't dribble. And don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to equate Chris Paul to Derek Fisher, and I'm not trying to equate Devin Booker to Kobe, but I'm saying they're in very similar roles here. Whereas, like, if Chris Paul can bring up the ball and lubricate the offense, that makes it so much easier on Devin Booker, and he can become unlocked Devin Booker that can do some crazy things. But with Chris Paul out or hobbled, now there's so much weight on Devin Booker's shoulders, and then with that, so much weight on DeAndre Ayton's shoulders to be like, all right, instead of getting your 15 and 10. I need you 25 and 10 because Chris Paul can't shoot and someone else has to score.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're totally right. The Suns are going to have to figure something out. It's just so unfortunate that kind of the storyline of Chris Paul's career is great basketball player, get to the playoffs, get injured. Like, that happens to him so often. And this year was just another great example of how he shows up to a team, raises their ceiling, makes them amazing, gets to the playoffs, and gets hurt. And it's so sad to see because if he can't come back, I mean, maybe this is one of those things where it's like, it's a stinger, it sucks, it's going to, for a week, it's going to hurt, but I'm going to be good after that. But it doesn't look like that so far. It looks like it's really messed with his shooting motion. It looks like it's really messed with his shoulder mobility, which is for a guy like Chris Paul is very important when he's making these like acrobatic passes and like getting other people open sort of thing. It just sucks to see that happen. And it's not like you got a gimme in the first round. Like, even if you had the Warriors in the first round, let's say, you would have a much better chance of winning this without Chris Paul, having him get some time to get healthy and then get into the second round, right? But that's not the situation they're in. Now they're playing the Lakers, who are the 7th seed, but also kind of like the favorites to make it through the Western Conference and get to the finals. And now you're just stuck in this shit situation where you're a 2 seed and you're probably going to quote unquote underachieve because you're probably going to lose the Lakers because you've now lost Chris Paul. And it's just very, very unfortunate.
And flipping the script here, because we would be amiss to at least not briefly touch on the Lakers here. Mm-hmm. I mean, you dodged a bullet.
Oh, yeah.
Because you guys are not playing good basketball.
No.
I mean, you have games here and there where players play good games, but the Lakers in whole are not playing good basketball.
Yeah.
If I'm a Laker fan, yeah, we stole one in Phoenix. Oh, yeah. I am so far from confident. Mm-hmm. Because let's be honest, with LeBron, with AD, with this team, anything less than a finals appearance, if you get to the finals and you lose to the Nets, fine. But anything less than a finals appearance, huge failure. Huge failure. And there's a lot of teams in the West that look better than they do.
Yeah, I mean, so if they win, if they beat the Suns, they're going to play the winner of the Nuggets and the Blazers. I think both those teams look really good right now. Both those teams are hitting a stride right now, while the Lakers are kind of like stalling out almost. They're still trying to figure out how does this team work as a team. Like
the whole AD Drummond debacle that they have right now is clunky. Maybe they'll figure it out, but like the plus minus when both them on the court is horrible.
Yeah.
But the plus minus when AD on the court is respectable. The plus minus with Drummond on the court without AD is even worse than the plus minus when both of them are on the court together. And it's like this whole maddening situation where like AD wants to play the 4. They got him a good center. And now they can't. Yikes, we are over. I'm looking at the clock.
We're a little bit over on this one.
This is going to be a long one, boys. But yeah, like they got AD wants to play the 4. They got him a 5. Now they suck together. So what do we do? I don't know.
Yeah. Their big man rotation is the best in the NBA and is maddeningly bad. Like, between Anthony Davis, Andre Drummond, Marc Gasol, and Montrezl Harrell, you should never have a big man rotation that is ever losing to another big man rotation. The Suns throw out DeAndre Ayton, Jay Crowder, Frank Kaminsky, and Dario Saric, and is somehow still better than you. That has got to be a major red flag. If you get into the next round and you're playing Nikola Jokic, I don't want to, you're kind of just screwed. Because it looks like he's going to feast on anyone that's out there right now. The Lakers very much are in a situation where they are trying to figure it out on the fly. They got lucky that Chris Paul was hurt. They're probably going to make it through this first round, and they're going to have to piece this thing together as they go if they actually want to make a championship run, which I don't know if is as feasible as they thought it was at the beginning of the season.
Yeah. Let's move on because I just lookked at the clock.
Let's do it.
We are at 50 minutes into this podcast.
You know what the sad thing is? We got our
two teams.
Next.
We're going to crowbar our two teams here at the end. But moving on, we have actually, I don't even think it's arguable. I think it's the chippiest series in the NBA so far. These two teams are chippy as fuck, and we're only 2 games in.
We don't like each other.
They don't. Dear God, everybody is just pissed off. That being said, they had one of the, in my opinion, worst refereeing crews in the NBA their last game. That constantly just mishandles situations, and they did it again. And I'm baffled that they're doing more NBA games, but that's beside the point. But last game between the Nuggets and the Blazers, no one was happy.
No.
Everyone on the court, the fans, everyone in the building was pissed off. Both sides. The refs are pissed at the players are pissed at the refs, the players are pissed at the other players, the fans are pissed at the players, the coaches
are pissed at the other fans.
The coaches are pissed at their players, plus the other team's play. Everyone was pissed.
Everyone's mad. Yeah, so pretty much what it's been is 2 blowouts between the Blazers and the Nuggets. Which is, I would not be surprised to see it be a couple of close games and then a bunch of blowouts and just whoever wins the most games wins the most games. But the referee, this crew, which is your favorite referee, Fivehead, was in this crew.
Fivehead is a referee who, I don't even know his name, but he has one of the worst hairlines I've ever seen in my life. And he's the guy who threw Kristaps out for fist bumping.
Doing the fist bump.
Doing a little fist bump. And they tossed him for it last year in the bubble. Anyways,
so yeah, you're totally right. It was a maddening game. I know from the Blazer perspective, we were super upset because we really only had one chance where we actually came back, and this was when Dame went nuclear at the beginning of the first half, or at the end of the first half of the last game. And then for the rest of the time, it's we couldn't get buckets. We were turning the ball over. The referees are fucking us, but then they're also fucking the Nuggets. And then rarely do you go on Reddit and you see both fan bases be like, yeah, that was pretty fucking horrible for the refs, right? And the other fan base is like, yeah, it was. Usually they're yelling at each other about stuff, but they're when there's mutual ground about the refs, that means they did really, really bad. So we don't have to go crazy on Blazer stuff. I know we're already over, but I think that this is going to be a very good series. I think it's going to be a long series. I could see a lot of blowouts go both ways. I love that the Blazers got one in Denver. I was a little nervous going into this series because Denver is such a good team. I was surprised that they finally started putting Aaron Gordon on Dame.
I was about to say, they finally deployed in my opinion, their secret weapon, which was Dame struggles against long defenders. If there's
long athletic defenders,
yeah. If there's
them.
Somebody that can stop Dame, which is not possible. If there's somebody out there that can limit Dame, it is a long, lanky, athletic, quick-footed defender. And the Nuggets have had that guy this whole time, but for some strange reason, they keep throwing Campazzo, who's 5'9" and slow-footed out there on him, and expecting him to do his best, which is fine. I love him. He gives me JJ Barea vibes as a Mavs fan. That being said, you have this athletic freak. Send him out there and let him try. You know? And if he gets in foul trouble, great. Then go back to what you were doing before. Mm-hmm. But at least let him try, because there's no one else. I mean, who else are you going to put him on? You're going to waste your best defender on Rocco?
Yeah. No, I mean, I was talking with producer Jay, who's a Nuggets fan, before the series, and I said if I was the Nuggets, I would be putting Gordon on Dame, and then I'd be putting Campazzo on CJ, and I would be hoping that
Norman,
Powell doesn't go off. And,
I was gonna say, and let Norman Powell beat you.
yeah, and if Norman Powell beats you, then you kind of just got to live with it. It's similar to like, look, if Aaron Gordon beats you, then you kind of just live with it. You know, he's the third option on the team, and that's where you're living with both of these situations. Is, you know, where the Blazers are struggle is their wings and their wing defense, and where the Nuggets struggle is their guards and their guard defense, and where they struggle the other team is good at. And so it's going to be a very, very interesting series where they both have mismatches, and it's kind of going to come down to who plays better between Dame and Jokic. I think both game, but they're both going to go off in any given game, but it's going to be who can lead their team to the wins in any given night. It's going to be a crazy series.
I think it's going to be which superstar, because both superstars are going to get theirs. It's which superstar can get the others involved better. And Dame has had double-digit assists in both games, but Jokic, in my opinion, is probably one of the best passers in the league.
Yeah.
So it's like who, because both Jokic and Dame are going to get their own points. And both have really good supporting casts. So who out there is going to get the others involved better?
Yeah. And both benches can be good. Like the Nuggets bench showed that they were really good in game 2. Blazers bench showed they were really good in game 1. It's going to be a very, very fun series. I'm going to be losing hair over the course of the next couple of weeks because of this series. But enough about that. Let's move on to the team that's going to make you lose hair. Over the next couple of games. How are you feeling about your young Mavericks team that is surprising everyone in the league?
They wanted this smoke. Now they fucking got it. Pat Bev, Marcus Morris, go put on your clown costumes because you guys are looking like fucking clowns out there. Let's go. Oh my gosh. Mavs are, in my opinion, the biggest surprise of the postseason so far. Going up 2-0 in LA against a team that a lot of people had picking to win the championship this year. A Mavs team who were good. I think a lot of people, no one was saying that they were bad, but I don't think anyone thought that they were going to get out of the first round, myself included. The people that know me, I am the most pessimistic sports fan in the world, but I turned a leaf when we made the playoffs, and I went to Mitch and others, and I was like, all right, you're going to see a positive Ethan, and I am being freaking rewarded because I have been met with nothing but positive vibes from my Mavs.
I just want to say congratulations to go and win 2 games on the opposite team's court is rare, and your percentages of winning this series have jumped astronomically. Vegas is even betting on you guys. I don't know if you saw, but you're minus 290 to win the series.
I don't love that. I don't love that.
Well, so if you break it down now, it's obviously 7-game series, right? 2 games are done. You've won 2 of them. The Clippers have to beat you 4 out of the next 5 games to win this series, which is a incredibly difficult task to do against Luka Doncic. Like, you kind of have to hope that Luka doesn't do that great, or that the side characters that have been so good for you in these first 2 games don't step up. And if that happens, then they have a chance. But you are officially in the driver's seat right now.
Yeah, it's been good. It's the team has been fun to watch. They are splashing threes at a unbearably good rate. They're playing, game 2 didn't give us much help, but they're playing good defense, at least in crunch time. In the second half, they played good defense of game 2. Our role players stepped up. Tim Hardaway Jr. has earned himself some money.
Whether it's from you or someone else.
In a contract year, he is playing amazing on the biggest stage. The Mavs took the biggest punch that Kawhi and PG could probably throw them. I mean, in game 2, Kawhi had 40 and PG had about 30, and they still were in the driver's seat the whole time. It's come down to, I think Ty Lue, the coach of the Clippers, has been outcoached.
Yeah.
And been outclassed in every facet of the game.
I have been on this bandwagon for a long time, and that's that Ty Lue is not that great of a basketball coach as far as X's and O's go. Excuse me, I'm burping because the beer's so good. But it's always been he's been a great player manager. And he's like, when he was with LeBron, like he was great at keeping LeBron focused, keeping him as the leader, like following what LeBron needed to do to get the championship. But now you're in a situation where you're with a very discombobulated Clippers team that is all over the place. Your rotation is all over the place. Rondo is out here yelling at the Clippers in the locker room. DeMarcus Cousins isn't healthy. Serge Ibaka's barely playing. You just gave an extension to Luke Kennard, and he's not even playing any minutes. Your team is, for a lack of other way of putting it, you're in shambles. You are falling apart right now. You are in a fucking deep shit right now if you're the Clippers. There is a very real chance that you get swept if you're the Los Angeles Clippers. I thought that they were going to win the West. I really did. I thought this was going to be the year the Clippers were finally going to make it together, really put it together, and I thought that they were going to win the West, and it does not look like that at all. They are all over the place, and a big part of that is because they cannot stop Luka, and all of the supplementary guys for the Mavericks are hitting those open threes that Luka has been giving them all year.
Yeah, it's been awesome to watch because this past 2 games in the postseason is what it could have been all year, and that was the Mavs have been a terrible 3-point shooting team this year. They were I think about 19th or 20th in the league, but they shot the third most, and they just shot a bunch but didn't hit. And Luka, still averaged a lot of assists, but it was one of those things where think how many he could average if guys would just shoot league average from 3. Just shoot league average. Luka could average 12 dimes a game. And now he's got guys hitting. And his assist numbers aren't necessarily up because he's also just taking it upon himself that hey, he took last year's loss personally. And the Mavs have taken the fact that the Clippers tanked because they wanted the Mavs in the first round again personally. And I have personally never seen the Mavs talk as much shit and be up in people's grills as much as I have this series. Normally when a player gets up and gets excited and talks shit, the Mavs will just kind of go back to their huddle and kind of figure it out. This year or this series, they have kind of stood up and be like, all right, cool. You want this? Then I'm going to come at you next time I get the ball. And it's been one-on-ones, but it's also been good ball movement, and it's early. We're only 2 games in. We've got, 2 more wins to go, but it is good to see that there is some chippiness to this team that has been missing for a long time, because the last time that this team had an edge to it, Tyson Chandler was playing for us. And that was a long time ago.
And that was a championship type of team.
Yeah.
Right? And, you brought James Johnson in to be the defender of Luka almost. And now Luka's out there being like, fuck you. I don't need no defender. These guys need someone to defend them because I am going to kick their ass on the court every night. I'm going to... fucking Patrick Beverly, you're too small. Marcus Morris, you're too slow. Nobody can defend me. Throw Kawhi at me. I still make it over him. I don't care. I love what I'm seeing from Luka right now. He is showing a grit that he has never had before. He's showing a sense of urgency, a sense of leadership, which I've never seen from him. He's angry. We're seeing mad Luka, and he's still out there laughing his ass off. Right? There's still pictures of him almost doing the Steph Curry thing where it's oh, I hit a 3 in your face. Pretty hilarious, right? And the other guy's not so funny. I love what I'm seeing from Luka. I love what I'm seeing from the role players. We don't want to get too ahead of yourselves because you haven't won the series yet, right?
I said,
still fall apart. It's still a very good Clippers team.
Game 3 will be huge. It is worth saying and it's worth mentioning the AAC where the Mavericks play in Dallas is petitioning to get 15,000 fans in the building.
Wow. For
their game on Friday. If that is the case, even if they don't and they get I think they got to 9 or 10,000, that place will be rocking. If I'm a Clipper player, I'm holy cow, we had to give discount tickets to fill the 1,700 that they were trying to get into their stadium. Whereas the Mavs are selling out. People in Dallas believe, people in Dallas are behind this team. This team is playing for the city. This team is playing for each other. This team is playing hard. They're playing angry. They're playing with a chip on their shoulder. They've got bulletin board material. Mm-hmm. The coaches, the Clippers have given them enough bulletin board material between this year, last year, tanking the whole 9, underestimating them, to where they've got it. They've got the motivation. They've got the umph. Where the Clippers are kind of like, we're better than them. Let's just beat them.
Yes.
And it is bit them in the ass.
Yeah, it's crazy. I live right next to the AAC, so I'm very much expecting to be able to hear the stadium next week. But I had a buddy who was looking at the prices. It was cheaper to buy a plane ticket and a hotel and the ticket to the game with the Clippers and fly back than it was to buy one single ticket that was across the street from where we live.
I love that.
How crazy
I
is
love
that?
that.
How crazy. That means Dallas is buying into this team, which is, it's pretty odd that Dallas buys into the basketball team because they're a football city, but they are buying into the Mavericks. They're buying into Luka. Everyone wants to see a part of this show because what we're seeing right now very well could be the start of a very magical run for a Mavericks team, for a young Luka. Congratulations to you guys for winning Game 1 and Game 2 in Los Angeles.
Long way to go. We got a long way to go.
There's a long way to go, and I think it's a very, very fun start to what you guys have been doing.
Absolutely. We have gone way over. I don't know what our clock says. Oh, boy.
Oh, man. We're entering Bill Simmons podcast
All
territory.
right. So let's wrap this up because we have gone over. Fun pod. This has been one of our looser pods. Very excited to kind of get this looser side to us. I mean, obviously, we've cussed a lot more, so hopefully that doesn't piss anyone off. If not, go fuck yourself.
Love it. Talk that shit.
Talk your shit. But yes, playoffs are here. We'll be back next week with another banger of a pod. I'm sure we'll probably do the same thing, or we just walk through the playoffs matchups. That's probably what we'll do for the next little bit. But excited to be back. Some Pulp, Turning Point, just solid beer, solid brewery. Give them a try. Local spot, super fun. Support your local little breweries, distilleries, all that stuff.
The local booze.
Local
Support
booze.
them. We love it.
Give them some love. Shout out to the Mavs for winning games 1 and 2. And cheers, brother. Much more playoffs that come ahead.
Yes, very excited about the NBA playoffs. Cheers, man.